Chapter 4. Stance Questions. 1. Economics. Listen to a lecture in an economics class. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
We've been talking about inflation and its effects, usually bad but sometimes good, on the economy. Now, remember, inflation is a situation when the value, the purchasing power of money goes down. A dollar today doesn't buy as much as it did, say, yesterday or last year or whenever. It causes prices to go up. But today, let's talk about stagflation. Stagflation is the combination of inflation and a stagnant economy in which production actually falls. So basically, today, I want to illustrate stagflation by using a specific event, and I'll show you how that event caused the different negative effects that led to stagflation, high prices, and a stagnant economy. It takes distinctive conditions to create stagflation in the economy, like during the 1973 oil crisis. The United States, and most of the rest of the world for that matter, relies upon something called OPEC for its oil. OPEC, or the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, is basically a partnership that collectively produces most of the oil in the world and so can strongly influence the price of oil. The oil crisis began as OPEC announced it would no longer export oil to the U.S. This action had a number of consequences, all of which led to the period of stagflation. The price of raw oil in the U.S. went up, lots, like 130%, since these producers no longer sold their oil there. This means that the U.S. gasoline manufacturers had to raise the price of gas. I mean, they still had to make a profit, right? So to compensate for the increased oil prices, they lowered gas production. You see, I could show you what I mean with a bunch of graphs and mathematical formulas, but really, I'm afraid that would just complicate the issue. Of course, graphs and formulas are important, but right now, in this class, I just want to describe why companies lower production and what results from that action. Here we go. Okay, there's a really good reason, well, for the oil companies anyway. Yeah, so there's a really good reason that companies lowered their production, and in this case, I mean that the American gasoline manufacturers lowered their production of gasoline. You see, when you lower production, the price goes up. Make sense? No? Okay, well, think about it this way. If there is less of any given product, people will pay more for it. Yeah, if something's scarce, then they'll typically pay more for that product than they would if there were a lot of it. So, the U.S. oil companies raised the price of gas, which in turn caused an increase in gas prices. But here's the problem for the gasoline producers. They're not making any more profit, because, as you'll remember, the price of the raw material oil went up. So, hey, prices went up for the consumer. And if I can put in my 2 cents worth, my opinion is that there aren't too many things worse for an economy than this. So you end up with a stagnant economy along with inflation. What do we call it? Stagflation.
1. What is the professor's attitude toward using graphs and mathematical formulas in today's class? 2. Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
The price of raw oil in the U.S. went up, lots, like 130%, since these producers no longer sold their oil there. This means that the U.S. gasoline manufacturers had to raise the price of gas. I mean, they still had to make a profit, right?
What can be inferred about the professor when he says this?
I mean, they still had to make a profit, right?
3. What is the professor's general attitude about stagflation? 2. Business. Listen to a lecture in a business class. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Today, I'd like to talk about a sales model known as direct selling. So let's start right off with a definition, shall we? Direct selling is just like it sounds, direct, as in, directly to the customer, a sale made directly to the consumer. You all know that products are typically sold in stores or, over the internet these days. In direct sales, the customer doesn't necessarily have to even enter a store at all. Direct sales is a way of selling a product directly to the customer without using a shop or an agent. For example, a knife manufacturer may sell its knives directly to the consumer without using a store, for instance. There are a number of different methods a company can use to sell directly to the public, and let's go over those now. The first one here I'm sure you're all quite aware of. A lot of direct sales are made through telephone calls to consumers. They're those annoying phone calls you always get during dinner. You know, the kind that gives you a long explanation of why their product is so good and how low the price is. Usually, they start out with some kind of question. The question that is phrased in such a way that most people will keep listening, thus giving the seller a chance to make the sale. That's one method of direct selling. Another important way to sell directly is through the use of seminars. Have you ever gotten a letter in the mail saying that you'll get a free gift if you come to some presentation about something? You're curious, so you go, right? Who wouldn't want a free gift? Then you go to the presentation and find out that they just wanted to get you there to sell you something? That's the seminar approach. Quite often, these are seen in the form of money-making seminars. The seminar might be on, how to make money in real estate, how to make money in the stock market, and so on. You get a free gift for showing up, but of course at the end of the seminar, a sales pitch is made. Usually they want to sell you books or tapes that offer more in-depth information on what was presented in the seminar. And last but certainly not least, we have demonstrations. Salespeople love to use demonstrations. A demonstration, sometimes called a product demonstration, is when a salesperson actually shows you how to use the product. It's a great way to attract buyers, and, frankly, I think they're kind of fun. You see these all the time at fairs and exhibitions. I often take a seat and enjoy them myself at such events. They're not typically very formal, and during them the salesperson can not only describe the product's benefits, but can also show the potential customer how to use the products.
1. What is the professor's opinion of direct sales phone calls? 2. What is the professor's attitude when he says this?
Have you ever gotten a letter in the mail saying that you'll get a free gift if you come to some presentation about something? You're curious, so you go, right? Who wouldn't want a free gift? Then you go to the presentation and find out that they just wanted to get you there to sell you something?
3. Which of the following best reflects the professor's attitude toward product demonstrations? 3. Office hours. Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Hello, Allison. I'm glad to see you're feeling better. That must have been a pretty bad strain of the flu you got for you to miss 3 of my classes in a row.
It was terrible, but I am feeling much better now, thanks.
What can I help you with?
Well, I'm actually concerned about my sculpture. Since I was out sick for so many classes, I'm not as far along as the rest of the class. I talked to Janie, and she's nearly done with her sculpture. So is Tom. And Tom told me that you moved the due date up a week and a half. I'm just not sure I can get my entire sculpture project done in time.
You should be able to catch up from those missed classes during studio times. That's actually why we have the studio open after classes and during the evenings. I know it can be hard to finish an entire project if you miss classes, but if you just spend some extra time in the studio, it shouldn't be too much of an ordeal.
Ideally, that's true, but every time I go to the studio, it's completely full. There isn't a single table open, and all the tools are being used too. Last time I went, I even tried to squeeze in at this one table. It was so crowded that somebody accidentally hit my elbow. It damaged my work so badly that I had to completely redo parts of my sculpture.
Now, Allison, I know that the studio can get a little crowded at times, but this is a class that requires work outside the classroom. It's a studio course, and you're getting credit for it. That means that you need to find times to go to the studio when it isn't occupied.
I know, Professor Brighton. I just don't know when that is. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, you could try going early in the morning. I know the thought isn't pleasant, but the studio is open from 7 until 9 when the first class starts. I know for a fact the studio isn't busy then.
I'm really not a morning person. Any other ideas?
You know, since you were sick, you might have to make some sacrifices in order to get it done. You still have to keep up, even if it's not easy, right? But okay. Anyway, let me think. Maybe you could ask another student to go to the studio at a different time so that you could go later. You said that Janie was almost through. Maybe she'd even be willing to forego one of her visits to the studio.
That's a great idea. Maybe if she isn't willing to do that, Tom would be. Then I could get my work done and still not have to get up so early. Thanks for the suggestions, Professor Brighton. I'm sure I'll be able to get one of them to help me out.
Not a problem at all. I'm glad I could help. Just make sure you get that project done by the 20th. That's the new due date. I'll see you later, Allison.
1. What does the professor mean when he says this?
I know it can be hard to finish an entire project if you miss classes.
2. What is the student's attitude toward the suggestion of visiting the studio in the morning? 3. What does the professor mean when he says this?
You know, since you were sick, you might have to make some sacrifices in order to get it done. You still have to keep up, even if it's not easy, right?
Four. Service encounter. Listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Hi, can I help you with something?
Yes, my mom called and told me she sent a package to me using express mail, and I should have gotten it today. But it wasn't at my dorm, and it was supposed to be delivered there, so I thought maybe the mail center got it by mistake. It's kind of important, too. It's my birth certificate. I really hope it isn't lost.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You don't want to lose that. Well, we usually get packages fairly early in the morning. I checked the storeroom earlier, and there wasn't a package back there. Plus, all the packages we receive are entered into the computer system, and there aren't any packages mentioned in today's records. It's your birth certificate, you say?
Yeah, my mom put it in one of the big document envelopes with the bubble wrap inside them. I think she may have sent it registered mail.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought you said she sent it express. The kind of mail service she used could affect when it's delivered. Maybe she sent it the wrong way and it will be here tomorrow.
I don't think so. She did send it by express mail, but I think she also registered it so that if it was lost, there would be a record of it.
I'm really not sure what to tell you. Did you check with the dorm staff? Maybe they have it. Maybe you should verify that none of the other dorms have received it in error. Maybe it was delivered to the wrong one or something.
That could take a while. How many dorms are there in all again?
Let's see. There's Davis dorm, there's Winters Hall, Fairbanks, Underwood, Parsons. You're right, there are quite a few. I think there are close to 7, but I really think that might be your best option. I really don't know of anything else for you to do.
I guess I'd better get started then. It's going to be a long day. I sure wish they would have just delivered it to my dorm.
Well, there's no need for you to walk around the whole campus from dorm to dorm. I have a list of the dorm phone numbers. Try calling them first. Then, if one of them has it, you can just go to that one instead of walking all over. I'll bet one of them got it. Do you know what day your mom sent it?
I think she mailed it on Tuesday, but it may have been Wednesday, I guess.
Either way, if she mailed it express, you should have gotten it by now. I definitely checked the dorms. Here is that directory of phone numbers. In fact, I'll bet you'll find it there. This has happened in the past and the missing package always shows up at a different dorm. So I wouldn't worry, but now you know what to check, okay?
Okay, well, thanks.
Good luck. I'll keep my eyes open here too, just in case it shows up. Actually, let me write your name and number down so that I can contact you if I find out anything.
Sure, it's Brian Masters, and my dorm phone number is 555-4281. Thanks for your help.
1. What can be inferred about the student when he says this?
It's kind of important, too. It's my birth certificate. I really hope it isn't lost.
2. What is the woman's attitude toward the package when she says this?
Yeah, I see what you mean. You don't want to lose that.
3. How sure is the woman that the man will find the package? Six. Business. Listen to a lecture in a business class. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
All right, productivity is always an important concern in business. It can either make your business succeed or fail. If your employees aren't productive, there's little chance that your business will succeed. The converse is also true. If your workers are productive, there's little chance it will fail, at least way less of a chance. There are still lots of other factors that can make a business fail, but anyway, what we're going to be talking about today has to do with productivity. It's called the Hawthorne effect. Basically, the Hawthorne effect states that a simple increase in the attention that a worker gets will increase his or her productivity. Sounds pretty unlikely, I know, but that's what the theory says. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of debate about whether it exists. See, in the 1920s, a factory started doing these experiments on how different changes affected their employees' productivity. This factory was called Hawthorne Works, which is where the Hawthorne effect got its name. Anyway, this factory brought in lots of researchers to conduct their experiments. So today, I'll just talk about the experiments they did, the ones that support the Hawthorne effect and those that don't, and I'll let you all make your own decisions. In the first test, they altered the lighting in the factory, then measured the amount of productivity. Now, I don't know about you, but I would think that if the workers had more light rather than less light, they would be more productive. But actually, the initial findings suggested that the lighting really didn't matter. See, the researchers found that regardless of the lighting, the productivity in the factory went up. This is puzzling. I mean, why would the productivity go up seemingly for no reason? Either there should be no effect at all, or there should be some correlation between light level and productivity. So the scientists at Hawthorne Works got this idea. They thought that maybe it was just because extra attention was being devoted to the workers. So because they were getting more attention, the workers performed better. A later test seemed to support the Hawthorne effect. The researchers recorded that this time, when the subjects were moved to another room, they were consistently more productive, regardless of anything else that was done. They felt that this was due to the extra attention the employees received, but I don't really believe it. Subsequent review of the experiments revealed other facts. What do I mean? Well, the room the workers were moved to had better lighting, more airflow, and On top of that, it was quieter. So there are actually quite a few reasons that could have caused the increased productivity, not just the extra attention. There are a few other things that help to disprove the Hawthorne effect. In one experiment, the researchers began with the subjects in the same room and measured how productive they were. Then they took them to a different work area and measured it again. Everything stayed pretty much the same. However, the researchers then gave the subjects breaks. This caused a notable increase in their productivity. When they returned to their original work areas without breaks, their productivity fell. Therefore, the researchers concluded that the attention really had nothing to do with it. The breaks caused the increase in productivity. Another experiment done at Hawthorne Works also seemed to undermine the Hawthorne effect. It also reinforces what the scientists learned with the last experiment I mentioned. Just like in the last one, the workers were moved to a different work area, but the workers didn't speed up. In fact, individual workers accommodated to the average speed of all the workers combined. There were no great workers, no terrible workers, only average workers. What I mean is, and this is really fascinating, even if a worker was particularly fast, he or she would slow down so that he or she wouldn't make the whole group look bad. Interesting, huh? But this really seems to contradict the idea of the Hawthorne effect. I mean, if it was just the attention causing increased productivity, the workers in each of these experiments should have done better, but they didn't. So basically, the whole idea of the Hawthorne effect has been called into question, and with good reason. So while the Hawthorne effect may be one of the most well-known ideas about productivity, extra attention toward your employees may not really cause them to do better. Instead, your best bet is better working conditions and salary.
1. What is the professor's general attitude toward the Hawthorne effect? 2. What is the professor's attitude when he says this?
Sounds pretty unlikely, I know, but that's what the theory says.
3. What is the professor's attitude when he says this?
What I mean is, and this is really fascinating, even if a worker was particularly fast, he or she would slow down so that he or she wouldn't make the whole group look bad. Interesting, huh?
Seven. Office hours. Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Professor Stevenson?
Yes. What can I help you with, Dan?
Well, I noticed in the campus newspaper yesterday that you had placed an advertisement for a research assistant position. I was hoping that you could describe what's expected a little for me. I might be interested in it.
Well, it's a 2-semester commitment. I don't want to hire someone and then have to find someone else halfway through the research. So I guess, first of all, can you commit to 2 semesters as a research assistant? It takes quite a bit of time.
I'm not taking a full course load next semester, and I had planned on taking it easy the following semester too. So I don't think the amount of time should be a big deal. 2 semesters is fine. I mean, 1 or 2, or even 3 is okay by me, whatever.
Okay, I need someone who can help me with both field and laboratory research. Basically, you need to know laboratory rules and have a good knowledge of chemical interactions. What kind of chemistry classes have you had?
I'm actually majoring in chemistry, and I'm a junior this year, so I've completed quite a few. I can bring you my transcript, what I have so far if you want.
That wouldn't hurt. I usually don't require transcripts, but hey, since you're offering, I really need to know what level of chemistry you are at right now. Also, a lot of the job is just observation. You'll accompany me during field studies, and you should really be able to pay close attention to the smallest details. I can't have my research assistant missing something, or it could compromise the whole experiment. Are you detail-oriented?
Very. I'm also really organized, so keeping track of massive amounts of information is pretty easy for me. I also don't usually misplace things.
Wonderful. But the most important thing is, do you have any relevant experience? Like with a research firm or something like that?
I've never had the privilege of working with a research firm, but I worked for a forensic laboratory analyzing various samples during my sophomore year. I know how to use all kinds of microscopes, DNA analysis software, and, well, all sorts of stuff like that.
It sounds like you might be a good candidate. You certainly have the right experience. What we're going to do is test water samples in the area for dangerous chemicals. Then, we'll take blood samples of people who live in the area and look for those same harmful chemicals in their blood samples. I'm looking for any correlation between the presence of hazardous substance in the body and high levels of the same substance in the community's water supplies. It's going to be fairly involved, and I want to make these tests and measurements in our subjects and in the water several times a month, which means we'll be very busy.
It sounds like it would be very interesting work. What does the application process involve?
Well, first, of course, you have to fill out a paper application. I also require 3 different professional references and a chemistry examination. Then I conduct an extensive interview. There's also a 1-week probationary period during which I can decide if you're the right candidate for the job. After that time, you'll be permanent for the entire length of the research project.
Does this job provide any credit hours by chance?
It doesn't count for any credit hours since it is a paid position, but it can be used in substitution for an upper-level chemistry course if you are awarded the assistantship. Also, this is the sort of thing that most graduate schools look for on an application for graduate studies. It really looks impressive to have worked on a professional research study. Plus, if you do get the position and I decide to publish the research, I generally do, by the way, your name will be on it as well, which can also be added to your resume when you're looking for a job after you graduate.
It sounds like it is a great opportunity to learn more and to build up my credentials. When is the application deadline?
It has to be submitted by 5 p.m. on September 17th. If any part of it is left blank, it won't be accepted, so make sure you fill it out completely.
1. Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
I'm not taking a full course load next semester, and I had planned on taking it easy the following semester too. So I don't think the amount of time should be a big deal. 2 semesters is fine. I mean, 1 or 2, or even 3 is okay by me, whatever.
What is the student's attitude toward the time commitment required? Two. What is the professor's attitude when she says this?
I usually don't require transcripts, but hey, since you're offering, I really need to know what level of chemistry you are at right now.
3. Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
I know how to use all kinds of microscopes, DNA analysis software, and, well, all sorts of stuff like that.
It sounds like you might be a good candidate. You certainly have the right experience.
What is the professor's attitude toward the student's qualifications? Eight. Service encounter. Listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Hi, I was wondering if you could help me with something.
Well, I guess that depends on the problem. What's your question?
I want to get signed up for work study again next semester. Can you check my financial aid status and see if I'll still be eligible?
Sure, you'll still be able to qualify, but unfortunately, my information says that the deadline for applying was on the, 29th. Unfortunately, a deadline's a deadline. There's nothing we can do about that.
Wait a sec. What is today? I thought it was the 27th.
It is, but the deadline was actually last month, not this month. I'm sorry, but that means you won't be getting any work study. Once the deadline is passed, there's really no way to submit a work study application and get all of the required processing, signatures, and approval done. It's really a very strict deadline.
Oh, Well, I work in the admissions office and I really enjoy it. Isn't there some way to still get work study?
No, there's not. I wish I could help, but there's really not anything I can do. And I have more bad news. I used to work in the admissions office when I was still a student here, and they don't allow non-work study students to work there.
Maybe they could make an exception. Since I still qualify for work study, but I didn't apply in time. I already know the job and I like it a lot. Plus, it's my last semester. I would rather not have to learn a brand new job for just one semester.
Let me think for a minute. You might be able to file a petition for exception with the director of admissions. You have to fill out the petition and then write a brief essay about why you should be granted the exception. They look at your work record, your grades, and your character, and then make a decision based on the composite. You know, how good of an employee and student you are.
Okay, I should be considered a pretty good employee, and I have a 4.0 grade average. Then what?
Well, if you check out, they may decide to let you go ahead and keep working there. But you should know, it's pretty rare for them to grant a petition of exception to the work-study rule. Generally, they prefer to keep those positions open for students who are actually receiving work-study aid. There are a lot of good positions that are for students that don't qualify for work-study. In fact, if you check around, you might be able to find one you like better. There may even be a different kind of position open in the admissions office. A lot of times, the different departments will have several different positions, and only a few of them are work-study. At least that way, you wouldn't have to change offices or work environment. You'd still be working with the same people.
I guess that might work. I'd still like to keep my other job, though. Do you think you could get me one of those petition forms? I'm going to fill it out, and if my petition for exception is refused, then I'll think about finding another job. Hopefully that won't happen. It'll be accepted and I'll have my old job back.
That would be nice. Here's that form. Now, make sure you include your entire work history at the university. So if you've ever had a work-study job in another department, put it down under work experience, and you'll also want to make sure to fill out the part about your current course load and your major and minor. The department directors like to know that stuff so that they can determine whether the job you're doing is applicable to your major.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Not that I'm aware of. You might include a couple of references. After you submit the form, you'll probably have to wait about a week while they check into everything. Then they'll contact you and interview you about your petition. You should have some idea about whether they have approved it or not by the end of the week after next.
Thanks for all your help.
1. What is the employee's attitude when he says this?
Sure, you'll still be able to qualify, but unfortunately, my information says that the deadline for applying was on the, 29th. Unfortunately, a deadline's a deadline. There's nothing we can do about that.
2. Which of the following best describes the student's attitude when the employee suggests that she change jobs? Three. Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
Do you think you could get me one of those petition forms? I'm going to fill it out, and if my petition for exception is refused, then I'll think about finding another job. Hopefully that won't happen. It'll be accepted and I'll have my old job back.
What can be inferred about the student? Nine. Anthropology. Listen to a lecture in an anthropology class. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Major changes in how people gathered food occurred during a period of time known as the Pleistocene epoch, which was from about 1.6 million years ago to roughly 10,000 years ago. And, as with anything in anthropology, there was a good reason for this change. You see, during this time, the population exploded. More people meant that the old methods of gathering food were no longer sufficient. Yeah, So it was during this time that people came up with the idea of broad-spectrum collecting. Suddenly, people started eating things they hadn't before. Oh, things like shellfish, clams, and oysters, for instance. And really, they ate anything they could find. Well, that was edible anyway. Let me explain broad-spectrum collecting now. You see, during much of the Pleistocene epoch, people could more easily gather enough food to feed their families. They picked berries or gathered different fruits and dug up nutritious roots and vegetables to eat. They also hunted for large game, animals, a lot. But for some reason, toward the end of the Pleistocene epoch, people began to look for more varied sources of food. This is what is known as broad-spectrum collecting. This is basically just a fancy name for eating a broader spectrum. For eating a greater variety of foods than they used to. They sought out a more diverse selection of food types. Now, there are a lot of different ideas about why people started looking for different sources of food. The population increase isn't in question. It is really an acknowledged fact that there was a larger number of people in the Pleistocene era. But it's actually kind of controversial about why broad-spectrum collecting began to develop and how this population explosion impacted the hunting and gathering of food. Some people, for example, they think that the population increase caused people to hunt too many of the larger animals. So many, in fact, that the animals weren't able to reproduce fast enough to maintain their numbers. This is what is known as the overkill hypothesis, and it's really, well, if you ask me, it's the most reasonable. Basically, all kinds of animals seem to become extinct, or at least, there were a lot fewer of them during this time. But hey, regardless what I think, this idea is disputed by a lot of people who think that these extinctions were simply the result of climate changes. They say that in order for such large numbers of varied species to become extinct, the climate would have to be the reason for the change in gathering habits. But listen up. These extinctions followed the movement of human beings around the world. So, as people moved into the until then uninhabited parts of the world, like North America and Australia, well, the extinctions followed. This really seemed to indicate that hunting had a large part in these die-offs. So yeah, these extinctions, well, they happened worldwide, wherever there were humans. Now, unless the climate changes were uniform around the globe, it is far less likely that they were responsible for broad-spectrum gathering. Human population, on the other hand, was consistent in its trends. It was going up. Broad-spectrum collecting also accounts for the fact that much of the food people began to eat was work-intensive to gather or hunt. If other sources of food were more readily available, it is much less likely that people would invest the time necessary to track down these other sources of food and prepare them for eating. A good example is shellfish. A lot of kinds of shellfish have an outer shell which makes preparation far more time-consuming. With all the demands already placed on humans' time, it seems, unlikely, I guess. It seems unlikely they would take extra time to find this food and prepare it unless their other options were limited due to overkill. Okay, I know there are a few more things I wanted to cover. Oh yes, there's one more reason the overkill theory seems plausible to me, and that is that people were simply not eating so well. They weren't getting the nutrition they needed. Now, you might think that if they were eating from a wider variety of food sources, they should have had better diets. But the fact is, if these people were used to eating easily accessible food, and that food started dying off, they would be forced to begin finding alternate food sources. It's not that they were eating different foods that they liked better. They were eating whatever they could find, regardless of whether it was good for them or not.
1. What is the professor's opinion of broad-spectrum collecting? Two. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
This really seemed to indicate that hunting had a large part in these die-offs. So yeah, these extinctions, well, they happened worldwide, wherever there were humans. Now, unless the climate changes were uniform around the globe, it is far less likely that they were responsible for broad-spectrum gathering.
What is the professor's attitude toward climate changes? Three. What is the professor's opinion of people's diets after they adopted broad-spectrum gathering? Ten. Biology. Listen to a discussion in a biology class. Fill in the diagram with the information that you hear.
Before we begin, I want to remind you that all your papers on animal intelligence are due next week and that each group will be responsible for a 10-minute presentation on their particular topic. With that in mind, you may want to pay extra close attention to today's lecture, which should be pretty interesting. It's about medicine, and in particular, I'm going to talk about animals that take and use medicine.
What do you mean? They know that certain things can help them recover from illnesses?
I thought my little introduction might surprise or, even confuse some of you. And to answer your question, Tom, no, not exactly, but you have the right idea. You see, animals seem to know that certain plants can help them with sickness.
I really don't see how an animal could be aware of the medicinal properties of a plant. I mean, it's more likely that they just eat this stuff because they ate it before and maybe it happened to help with a common problem. Or maybe the animals eat the plant because it's part of their diet anyway, and they happen to gain some other benefit just because they eat it.
Well, you could think of it that way if you wanted to, I suppose, but if you did, you'd be wrong. Actually, animals really do seem to know that certain plants help them medically.
Really? Like what, for example?
Like the fact that certain kinds of monkeys, when they find Aspilia plants, they actually purposely go out each day and locate these plants. They rub the leaves in their mouths. They are very bitter, and the monkeys don't even seem to really like the taste. It's really as if they know the plants are beneficial for them.
How are they beneficial? I mean, are they just nutritious or…
No, they aren't just nutritious. These plants are really good at killing parasites that inhabit the intestines of wild animals. The acidity kills them. There are other animals that do these kinds of things too. Usually, the medicines that they take are to treat some sort of fungus or parasitic problem. Let's see. Oh yes, bears. Bears chew certain leaves too, in order to get rid of internal parasites. But they also use the medicinal properties of plants to treat external problems as well. Like chewing the osha root and then spitting some of the juices into their fur. By doing this, they can get rid of parasites that live on them. It's kind of like a bear bath.
I didn't know that animals were that smart. I always just kind of figured that they only did things because that was what was instinctual.
And that may be some of it. But these kinds of things happen far too often to simply dismiss them as mere coincidence. Here's another example. This one is really cool. Do you all know what cyanide is?
It's a poison, right? A really deadly one. You're not going to tell me that some animals eat cyanide.
Oh, but I am. They do. It's really quite an amazing phenomenon. In fact, I've saved the best for last. You're not going to believe this one, okay? Anyway, a lemur, that small monkey-looking animal with a really long tail. Some lemurs eat a certain kind of bamboo that has cyanide in it. In fact, every day they eat about 12 times the lethal dose for animals of similar size. Now, they just do this for food. So, how do they counteract the poison then? Well, the lemurs somehow found out that by eating the soil, dirt, they can keep the poison from killing them. The ions in the soil neutralize the poison, allowing the lemurs to eat all the bamboo they want. Pretty amazing, isn't it? So, in conclusion, I think there is some pretty strong evidence here that animals are smart enough to learn how to protect themselves, even if that means using medicine. I suppose you could argue against me, but I'm pretty sure you'd be wrong.
1. Listen again to part of the discussion. Then answer the question.
In particular, I'm going to talk about animals that take and use medicine.
What do you mean? They know that certain things can help them recover from illnesses?
I thought my little introduction might surprise or, even confuse some of you. And to answer your question, Tom, no, not exactly, but you have the right idea.
Why does the professor say this?
I thought my little introduction might surprise or, well, even confuse some of you.
Two, listen again to part of the discussion. Then answer the question.
You see, animals seem to know that certain plants can help them with sickness.
I really don't see how an animal could be aware of the medicinal properties of a plant. I mean, it's more likely that they just eat this stuff because they ate it before and maybe it happened to help with a common problem. Or maybe the animals eat the plant because it's part of their diet anyway. And they happen to gain some other benefit just because they eat it.
What can be inferred about the student? Three, what is the professor's opinion of the lemur example she gives?